No system is perfect, but generally speaking, I want to applaud the Obama administration's, what I think, an aggressive and responsible use of the drone program, particularly in parts of the world where we don't have ground forces or a whole lot of control to make the rest of us safe. So I don't get to say many good things about President Obama in South Carolina, but I will say that I think he's serious, I think he's thoughtful, and I think he takes the responsibility when it comes to targeting people in a very commander-in-chief-like way. General Cartwright, as a Marine, when you're ordered into battle by your commander-in-chief, do you obey his orders?
I do.
So I find it a bit odd, quite frankly, that we're going to give the commander-in-chief, under the Constitution, by the way, the authority to order our own citizens into battle, but they don't get to go to court. You know, the Marines don't get up to say, you know, I think that's a dumb decision. I want to go get a judge to say, hey, you shouldn't go. My belief is that there is nothing more basic to being commander-in-chief than being able to order people into battle and being able to suppress the enemies of this nation. So if you want to talk about transparency, count me in. If you want to talk about having Congress more involved in how the system works, but if you're contemplating conferring the power from the commander-in-chief to a bunch of unelected judges to make wartime decisions, count me out. That would be, to me, a breathtaking overstepping, and quite frankly unfair to the courts, because if there's a situation where they get a case and they say, no, we don't think you're quite there, and that person winds up killing a bunch of Americans, there'd be outrage in this country like you've never seen, and the court can't defend itself. But here's where elected officials have a different standing. The President of the United States would have to answer to the people about any mistakes he made. So count me in for reforming the system. Count me out for basically turning the war into a crime. Now, the doctrine of preemption. Do you think that's a solid doctrine, Mr. Bergen, in the war on terror?
It all goes to the question of imminence, sir.
Well, the theory being that basically when it comes to Al-Qaeda and Taliban and other folks, it's better to hit them before they hit you.
If you look at the victims of these strikes, overwhelmingly now they're lower-level members of the Taliban. So the question is, do they pose an imminent threat?
Okay, let's talk about that. General Cartwright, you're in Afghanistan. You walk up on a bunch of Taliban guys that are asleep. Do you have to wake them up before you shoot them?
No.
Why?
Because it's an area of hostility, and he is a legitimate military target, or they
So,
are.
Mr. Bergen, that's the point. Once you're designated an enemy, we don't have to make it a fair fight. We don't have to wake you up. We're going to shoot you. And that's the point, is don't become part of the enemy. And here's the problem. How do we know if you're part of the enemy? That is a legitimate, honest inquiry here. So what I'm suggesting is that we kind of back off and look and see the goal we're trying to accomplish. What's your name again, sir? I don't want to mispronounce your name.
Al-Muslimi.
Okay. I've been to Yemen. It's a country in great turmoil. Do you agree with that?
A country of?
Great turmoil. Great conflict.
It definitely have a lot of problems.
Okay, and I understand that. Mr. Bergen, would you have advised President Obama to call the Pakistani government up to go arrest bin Laden?
Well, it was discussed and it was rejected.
Can you imagine what would have happened if it came out in the public that we told the Pakistani government, bin Laden's over here, go get him, and he got away? My party would have eaten President Obama alive. And the reason President Obama didn't do that, in all candor, is you can't trust the Pakistan government to go pick up bin Laden. And all due deference to your country, there are places in your country I wouldn't tell anybody about what we're up to, because I think the person that we're trying to capture or kill would wind up knowing about it. Your point is, why don't we arrest the guy in the village? Nothing would please me more to be able to arrest somebody to interrogate them, but the world in which we live in is that if you share this closely held information, Colonel McSally, you're going to wind up tipping off the people we're trying to go after. Do you agree with that?
In some cases, absolutely, sir.
So I just want to put people in President Obama's shoes for a moment. What do you share and who do you share it with? And who do you pull the trigger on and who do you give a pass? All I can say is that he, above all others, and the next person to occupy that office needs to have a reasonable amount of deference, but not unchecked power. We have one commander-in-chief. We can't have 535 commander-in-chiefs. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad we're having this debate, but when it comes to the law of war, the two professors, is it fundamentally different than domestic criminal law?
Yes, it is.
Okay. The purpose of the law of war is to win the war, is to neutralize the enemy, to gather intelligence. The purpose of domestic criminal law is to solve a crime, bring people to justice, giving them a chance to be acquitted or convicted. And the purpose of the law of war is fundamentally different. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, and the goal here is to make sure that we know the difference between fighting a war and fighting a crime. And here's the problem for the country. There is, Mr. Bergen, no capital to conquer. There is no Air Force to shoot down. There is no Navy to sink. We're fighting an ideology that is transforming itself all over the globe. We need to look at the AUMF anew. We need to broaden the ability to go after the enemy because it's changing day by day. But we need to do so within the values of being an American. And I would end with this thought. Please don't mistake my zeal for defending the country without that I don't have values. It was Senator McCain and myself with many others who said, don't torture the detainee. When you capture someone, we don't cut off their heads, we give them the lawyer. That makes us better, not weaker. So count me in for the idea of fighting the war within our values. The reason I don't want to torture anyone is because that's not who we're about, and it hurts us more than it helps us. But having said that, I do understand the difference between fighting a war and fighting a crime. And I will work with my colleagues in any way possible to make sure we make the least amount of mistakes as a nation. But the one mistake I will not tolerate is the mistake of believing we're not at war.